Well, welcome back to another travel news episode. I'm your host, Robert Witham. I scour the news for stories of interest to travelers and those who love the great outdoors so you don't have to. And I try in these episodes to keep you apprised of what's going on out there. We got a few wildlife stories today, 3 of them, 2 about moose and 1 about grizzly bears. So I hope you'll enjoy these stories. All right, first up, a New Mexico man was attacked by a bull moose yesterday, August 25th, while running with his dogs on a trail near Winter Park, Colorado. The man was running at about 7:30 in the morning with 2 dogs who were off leash and running ahead of him on the trail. The dogs came running back suddenly past the man and left the scene. And quick interjection here, I hate to say this, but I got a thunderstorms going and the wind's blowing like crazy, so if you're hearing some noise or seeing the curtains blowing around, that is why. So, Colorado Parks and Wildlife District Wildlife Manager Serena Roxand explained that he stopped and saw the moose at 50 feet after the dogs ran past. The man reported to wildlife officers that he took 2 steps forward. Mind you, we're talking about 50 feet away from a bull moose here. He took 2 steps forward to get a better look at the moose, and those 2 steps caused the moose to charge. CPW officer Serena Roxon went on to note that he's very lucky that his only injury is a hoofprint-shaped laceration on the back of his head. All I can think at this point is that humorous Christmas song, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Except in this case, it was a moose, and it wasn't Christmas. But anyway, Roxon went on to say, this is a good reminder for folks to keep their dogs on leash and give moose plenty of space when recreating outdoors. It's hard to see around these corners with the thick vegetation of these trails, so having a dog on a short leash here is key. Now, I had somebody accuse me in a story I did, a video I put up yesterday, I believe it was, about a California family that died on the trail, said I wasn't being respectful enough. That's hogwash. I'm very respectful when I deal with serious stories and tragedies. However, I'm not going to be respectful when something like this happens. I mean, sorry, but this was an avoidable situation, okay? For several reasons. The first of which is wildlife officials say all the time, keep your dogs on a leash when you're out there in the forest or in the wilderness, because they're going to run into things. If they're running around by themselves, there's things like rattlesnakes that they can get bit by, but then there's other bigger predators like bears, big animals like moose, and dogs are notorious if they're running out loose for getting encounters with these animals and either chasing them back to the human or running away from them back to the human, in which case the animal chases them right back to you. So you're not doing your dogs or yourself any favors if you're letting them run loose when you're out in the wilderness with other animals or other wildlife who oftentimes don't think your pet dog is a great thing to have around. So it does create some problems, and there have been a lot of stories I've heard of people running into situations with bears or moose or things because of dogs in general, but especially loose dogs. So they say those things for a reason. They're not trying to make your life difficult. They're not trying to make your dog's life difficult. They're saying it for a reason, because you're out in the wilderness in nature, and wildlife does what wildlife does, just like dogs do what dogs do. Now, as far as some other ways this could have been avoided, National Park Service has the following moose safety recommendations. Give moose plenty of room, and they include an exclamation point on that statement. And according to the National Park Service, they are likely to stand their ground even when they hear people approaching. So this is, a lot of other wildlife will run away or might wander off, sneak off if they hear humans coming. Moose are a little different in that they're likely to stand their ground. So if you do find yourself close to a moose, the recommendations is 4 here. If it hasn't detected you yet, keep it that way. If it knows you're there, talk to it softly and move away slowly. Don't take a couple steps closer from 50 feet away to see if you can get a better view, because that's not going to end well. Don't be aggressive. You want to convince the moose that you are not a threat. So again, don't take a couple steps towards the moose when you're only 50 feet away. And if you think the moose is going to charge you, they say to take cover or run away. Now, unlike bears, moose will usually not give chase to a human, because they view you as no longer a threat because you're running away. If they do chase, it's usually not very far. And as far as taking cover, we had a story a little bit ago about a man who was a hiker who was charged by a bull moose. I think that was also in Colorado. But he got behind a tree, and so the moose crashed into the tree, and then they were able to go their separate ways. So get some cover or get away and watch them from a safe distance. They're awesome, incredible animals, but you want to watch them from a safe distance. So another moose story here. This one, again, is out of Colorado. They got a lot of moose in Colorado, apparently. We got them in Wyoming, too, in the bighorns. It's really awesome getting to see them. Well, Colorado Parks and Wildlife officers rescued a moose calf that had become trapped in the basement of a burned house in Colorado. The house had burned in the East Troublesome Fire last year. But the foundation was still there and exposed, and this calf moose ended up getting stuck in it. Colorado Parks and Wildlife officer Serena Roxon, who was mentioned in the last story as well, responded to the scene after some neighbors in that, I guess it sounds like it's like a subdivision or something, but the neighbors reported it. She responded to the scene, found the calf in the basement along with the agitated mother nearby. Roxon said the calf's mother would come up to the foundation, walk over to the calf and touch muzzles, and then walk away about 40 yards. Both animals were tranquilized and loaded onto a wildlife transport trailer, and these moose were then relocated to a more suitable habitat near Craig. Colorado Parks and Wildlife Area Wildlife Manager Jeremy Huntington said it's a good reminder that folks need to fence off foundations and cover their window wells because animals can get trapped and die. And then he went on to say, we've had some increased reports of human-moose conflicts near Grand Lake where this occurred since the East Troublesome Fire burned, and we didn't want to take the risk that this moose might get trapped again if we released it near the burn area. And Colorado Parks and Wildlife has been working to grow the moose population in suitable habitat near Craig and Meeker. So this relocation actually is a win-win for the moose and the CPW project, Huntington said. So that probably is a good deal for everyone involved. The moose got to a safer spot, and they hopefully can live out their moose days without falling into any more foundations of burned out houses. And then finally, another story here this one's from Alaska. A hiker in Denali National Park and Preserve was attacked by a grizzly bears actually on Monday, August 23rd this week. The man was hiking alone in dense fog in the Thoroughfare Pass area when he was charged by a mother bear and multiple cubs. The bears apparently emerged and charged from nearby bushes. The hiker sustained puncture wounds to his shoulder, ribs, and calf during the attack, but he was able to deploy bear spray during the attack. That sounds like he wasn't able to get it out before, but he was able to deploy it during the attack, and authorities believe that interrupted the attack. So following the attack, the man had to walk 1.5 miles to a visitor center where, fortunately, there were some vacationers there who were medical personnel back in the real world when they're not on vacation in Denali. They were able to treat his injuries temporarily while a park bus driver called for help. The hiker was first transported to a nearby medical center before being taken to a Fairbanks hospital 120 miles away. So the man was then stabilized at the Fairbanks hospital. Bottom line here, and if you've been watching these, well, you've heard me say this before about some of these wilderness experiences, but you and you alone are responsible for your safety and security when you're out in the, well, really all the time, but especially when you're out in the wilderness. We've been seeing this last year, especially year and a half, a whole bunch of people who haven't typically done much backcountry things, hiking, camping, whatnot, getting out and getting out and experience nature. That's a great thing. No problem there. But when you got people getting out who don't have experience in the backcountry, it increases. We've seen an increase in incidents with wildlife and with other injuries and illnesses sustained because of that. So I don't know what this guy's situation was. I'm not saying he was not an experienced hiker. I have no idea. But in this case, he did have bear spray. That's a good thing. The bear spray was able to stop the attack. But note that a lot of times with bear incidents, and this is one of the reasons why wildlife experts say you're better off with bear spray than firearms when it comes to stopping a bear attack. Is hunting a bear is a different thing altogether. When an incident of attack, you usually have it happens very close range, and you literally have a second or a few seconds from the time you identify the threat of an attacking bear until the bear is on you and doing damage. So your opportunity to draw any kind of defensive weapon and employ it is very brief. And truthfully, the bears are so massive, with thick fur, fat, muscle, bone, the chances of successfully stopping a bear attack with a firearm and a handgun, is what you'd typically be carrying hiking, is not that great. The bear spray does tend to work very well. It's lighter, it's easier to carry, and it's more likely to stop an attack in those few seconds. The catch is you also have to have it readily available in a holster. Chest holsters are pretty common, sometimes belt holsters, but you want it readily available and easy to deploy, because if you need it, you're going to need it fast. The other thing that comes up here is this case, the guy had to walk 1.5 miles to the nearest help. There's plenty of places in Denali he would have been more than 1.5 miles from help, but he had to walk 1.5 miles to help, got some first aid there, transported him to a medical center that provided some basic care, and then transported him again to a hospital 120 miles away. So that's a period of hours from the initial injury until the guy is able to receive definitive medical care and be stabilized and receive whatever treatment was necessary. So when you're out in the backcountry, you've got to be able to take care of stuff yourself, and whether that's defending yourself from an attack or treating yourself for injuries, you've got to carry your first aid kit with some basic supplies. You have to know how to use them so you can take care of these things yourself while you're trying to get help. So if you're bleeding from multiple injuries, from multiple wounds, and you have to hike a considerable distance, you may not even make it 1.5 miles. So it's really important to be able to control bleeding and get things started while you're out in the field, and then to have some kind of communication device so you hopefully can get help as quickly as possible when something does happen. And in this case, by the way, some of you are probably wondering now, but National Park Service officials said there are no plans to locate the bears involved in this incident because it appears to have been a case of the bear defending her cubs. So that's how that story ends. Hopefully this man makes a full recovery. Fortunately, he had bear spray to stop the attack, or it might have turned out very differently. And that's what I have for this episode of Travel News. Thanks for joining me. And if you like scenery and videos with nature and landscapes and things, be sure to check out my other channel, Meanderings. It's right here on YouTube, youtube.com/meanderings, and you can that's where I put all my travel scenery videos. And on this channel, news and information of value to travelers and those who love the great outdoors. And I try to put up videos at least Monday to Friday around noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes the timing's a little off. Sometimes there's also more than one, or some on the weekends. But that's what I aim for a schedule. Thanks for joining me, everybody. We'll catch you in the next one.